Welcome to Teen Talks Money's newest show, What's Poppin'? I'm your host Ashray Gopa, and in this show we'll be talking to experts at the top of their field and learn a bit about them and their profession. With this show, we hope to educate you about the various fields out there. Maybe you'll see a field you like on this show and make a career out of it. In this episode, we'll be talking about human resources. We'll be talking to Mounika, who leads PeopleSoft for Asia Pacific at a tech startup called Postman. She partners with business leaders to develop the future organizational structures, manages global compensation strategies, and operations for the APAC region. She specializes in HR at startups and has worked at successful tech startups in the past. How are you doing today?
I'm doing very well, thank you for asking.
So let's start off with the first question. What exactly is human resources and how does that translate in a typical career?
Human resources is all about people, and it has changed over the last few years on how it is defined. People think it's only about hiring and firing, but it's got a lot more than that.
When you mean by hiring and firing, your job entails mostly hiring people and firing people, or would you say more in that?
It is part of that. It is much more than hiring and firing. So the entire employee life cycle is managed and owned by the human resources. That's what I was trying to tell you.
That's great. How did you start your career in HR and how did you grow in the past few years?
I started my career in recruitment for the first couple of years. Then the startup bug bit me, and I moved on to a cloud telephony startup called Exotel, worked there for a year. Then I moved on to becoming the first HR person for another tech startup called Freshworks, who went IPO last year and is one of the biggest startups in India currently, in Chennai. And then Postman happened, so I moved into Postman a couple of years ago.
Oh wow, Freshworks is really interesting. Didn't they go for IPO for $1 billion last year?
Yeah.
How did you start working at Freshworks?
I started working at Freshworks in 2013. So I got introduced to Girish, who's the CEO, through an ex-colleague, and that's how Freshworks happened.
And that's really interesting. Freshworks is really cool. And how did you start working in Postman?
So something very similar to Freshworks' story. Another friend of mine had referred me to Abhinav, who's the CEO, and that's how I got connected. We started talking, I started exploring if Postman was the right place for me, and that's how Postman happened.
What is a typical day in your job?
It depends what part of HR function you belong to. If you ask me, my job starts off with a lot of transactional moves to a strategic role at the end of the day. So it involves a lot more. So let's say if I'm a talent acquisition specialist, my entire day is just about finding great talent in the market, talking to them, understanding their requirements, trying to hire them for a role that my company is looking for. Or let's say I'm into operations. My job probably would entail talking to employees, doing their paperwork, etc. It depends what function of HR you belong to.
Oh, that's cool. Which function of HR are you part of now?
So I manage all the functions of HR. So my team pretty much does all the work of all the functions that I just mentioned. So my role involves a lot of strategy and less of transactions.
That's cool. What kind of education would you require for a career in HR?
It could be an undergrad or a postgrad in the HR. It could, vary from doing an MBA in HR or a BBA, BBM, whatever. Any degree in HR, but there's no hard and fast rule. People who have not had a formal degree in HR can still do HR. With a bit of training, maybe, yes.
That's very interesting. What are some of the challenges or roadblocks that one may come up in this profession?
See, when you deal with people, people are of various kinds, right? So that itself is a challenge, and our role typically, for us, empathy is the main thing, and the second thing would be communication, right? If let's say I'm letting go of somebody, that's going to be a very, very hard conversation for me. It's not easy to say you're probably today's the last working day for you, right? These are typical challenges that an HR would face in their daily job.
And so you would have to have an empathetic behavior and very communicative.
Yes.
And what other behaviors would you have to exhibit for this profession?
See, apart from empathy being the biggest one, right? Because you will have to be in the employee's shoe to understand what they need to make it very productive for them. So it's important to remain empathetic. Then communication, when I say it's not really about just being fluent in a certain language, it's more than that, right? You've got to be articulate. You've got to actually let the other person know what you're trying to say, right? Apart from that, you definitely need to know basic knowledge of HR and really know about how do you draft policies, guidelines, etc.
That's very cool. And what kind of people would you recommend this profession to?
I think people who are good with people, who like dealing with people and their issues, who want to be in a position where you can influence a lot of founders of the company to take strategic decisions, because no company, no organization can be run without the help of people, right? As an individual, you can reach only a certain level, but only when you have the right set of people is when your organization is going to get successful. And for that to happen, you need the right people ops or the HR folks to do that. So, yeah, I guess that's what it is.
So you said you worked in a tech startup, right? How would you say it's different from a typical job? Like at the tech startups, you have to work more, right? But the payoff is much more competitive and better. But how would you say it's different from a company?
I would say it's very different. It really depends on the industry that you're part of, the size of the company. So I specialize in startups because I enjoy doing breadth of work instead of going deep into something, right? So in bigger companies, what tend to happen is the number of people in a certain function become a lot higher. So your impact in that company gets lesser, which is why I personally enjoy being in startups. It's not different from other companies. I would just say it depends on the size of the company, the industry that you're in.
So that's very interesting. Would you say you would recommend startups for aspiring HR people or companies?
It really depends. I will tell you probably what kind of people would suit in startups. We don't typically work from 9 to 5. I don't think we have, a concept of timing at all, right? So a growing startup or an early stage startup will look for people who give in their best, who bring in their best productive excellence in their jobs. So I wouldn't be like, oh, it's 5 o'clock and I'm shutting my laptop. It doesn't work like that. Today, the world of HR, the world of job opportunities have changed a lot since the pandemic, because you can pretty much sit anywhere in the world and still be productive in a company that's not even in your country.
That's very interesting and really cool. I'm really finding this very interesting. So what are some fun things you do in your profession or job, like the most fun or interesting thing you ever did?
Fun is very subjective, right? So a lot of things, we do a lot of things which are for fun. And for me, learning is fun. When I get to do things that I've probably not done the year before, sounds like fun, right? So the learning opportunities that I get of course, is fun for me.
You said learning, there's a lot of learning in it. Is there a big learning curve in HR, or would you say that learning process in the job is something you have to expect, or is it something you find really fun?
Yeah, so learning curve in HR is very fast. It really depends on what kind of industry and what kind of company that you're working for as well. And at the end of the day, it's also in the hands of individual, right? It depends on how fast you want to grow. So the opportunities will keep coming in based on that.
That's cool. And so you would say HR really depends on the individual, and how hard you work on it depends on you, and
Yeah,
you can improve your career that way.
absolutely.
Okay, and if you would want to give your younger self a bit of advice, what would it be, whether it's in your career or your personal life in general?
Actually, in both, I think the one thing I'd tell my younger self is read a lot more, which I probably didn't do enough when I was younger because of various reasons. You almost tend to get busy with the things that you do and you don't really, give yourself time to read. I think reading will just definitely take you places, and that's what I would tell my younger self.
And what would you give the audience advice about life?
About life, I think life is definitely short. Enjoy, learn as much as possible, and keep having fun.
And that's it for the show. Thank you for watching. Big thank you to you.
You're most welcome. Pleasure's mine.
Please like and follow. And that's it for What's Popping episode 1.